Alright, so I'm going to give this a minute and then test it out on my phone real quick because last time I started doing this I was rambling for some time and then it turned out I guess I didn't set up the microphone and it was silent. So give this a moment and then I'm going to go check. But I don't know. I have so many different titles for uh, like my streams of consciousness. Like I try to keep the blogs separated by kind of tone, what I'm doing, and blah 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 blah. Like one's Diary of a Dissident, one's Outright Impeach the State, which is the name of the blog, which was the first ramblings I'd ever put on the internet was through the blog. Probably one YouTube video on this channel from like 12 years ago or something when I first became an anarchist, and I just asked a bunch of questions called I don't even know what it's called. Oh, some questions who people who believe in government. That's what it was called. And then I started making the blog, but I try to separate them. This one's called Anarchy Rover. I don't know why. Honestly, I made a soccer team in FIFA many years ago, and they were called the Anarchy Rovers. So it's just because I'm just kind of gonna go through things randomly on this and pick it apart. Just kind of freeform, no previous research, just reacting to silliness I see on the internet and giving an anarchist perspective. So let me finally go to the channel and make sure that we have audio and everything, all that good stuff, in order for people to hear the truth of anarchism. Or the lie of government, whichever. That's probably the better way to put it. It's just so people don't say, see, it's a cult. It's actually the opposite. Government's the cult. Alright, let's see. Okay, cool. Audio is good. Alright, so here's something that I saw. Apparently it was done by Ben Garrison, who a lot of people might know. He makes pretty good cartoons sometimes, and it's like, yeah, okay, kind of, this is okay. The reason I'm sharing this, though, I mean, I don't think, Ben Garrison probably doesn't understand how this applies to pretty much all statists, but the person who posted this most definitely does not. It's in a group, an anarchist group, more or less. I guess it could have been a libertarian who made this. If he did, he wasn't really following all the way through. But basically, this person is a MAGA-crat. So, the irony of this is, of course, in his caption, he says socialism will never work. Blah blah blah. Probably some ChatGPT stuff, which I'm sure is pretty accurate. I don't necessarily care to go through that. It's just the point of, okay, so Trump has talked about price controls on credit cards, right? That's something where he talked about that he thinks maybe would be a good idea. He wants to throw these threats around at the greedy lenders, and if you ask the MAGA-crats, you can get him to sound like literal Nazis. I don't think that it has as much to do with racism. I think MAGA is just kind of has racists in it because where else are they going to go? Like if there is a racist, you kind of know, I would say you're safe in assuming which politician they're going to support. But that's not to say that MAGA is inherently a racist thing or that a person who believes in it is inherently racist. They have kind of a more, they do retain in some sense, I will give them this slight caveat, they do retain in some sense a more generic type of civic nationalism as opposed to an ethnic nationalism. So I'm not going to just label them. It's tough to label them Nazis because that immediately conjures up, racism and anti-Semitism and things like that. And that's number one. That's not really fundamental to the problems that MAGA and other socialists and any statist potentially presents. It's completely, I'm sure they could be tied together, but if a person was just a racist and not a state worshipping authoritarian, he would end up being relegated probably to racist communities or living in the backwoods or whatever, because most of society does not operate that way. There would be, you know, collectives and pockets and areas where that's would be the case, and that's fine. They can go and live on their properties how they see fit, as long as they're not violating anyone's rights. Of course, that would sound probably like I support, like as though I am a racist to a lefty or whatever they want to call themselves, just in the fact that I think it's okay for them to go and make businesses and have their own properties where they say, I'm not going to serve you if you're black or white or a woman or whatever, Middle Eastern. Like, it's a person's right to be racist and believe whatever nonsense they want, as long as they're not violating other people's rights. And that turns into the lefties think that if you're refusing to serve somebody in your business, that's a violation of that person's rights, which of course only implies that that person is entitled to the goods to begin with. So why is he even having to pay, right? Like, if you have to pay, that implies that you're not entitled to be served generally. So yeah, but the lefties and honestly most conservatives don't really get that either. But Keynesian economics and perspective on the interest rate. Trump, his whole thing lately has been they need to slash the interest rate because the economy is going to cool down. I mean, that's textbook Keynesianism. That's modern monetary theory nonsense, kind of more just direct Keynesianism. But he clearly believes all that nonsense, and so instead of just saying we need to outright abolish the Fed or primarily focus on inflation, he basically just disregards inflation, or their claim that it isn't inflationary. It isn't inflationary. We don't have inflation. It's like you're insane. Okay, the dollar is worth practically nothing compared to what it was just 20 years ago. So, they're very short-sighted. All statists are. They're very short-sighted. They don't understand, what money really is and how the Fed is actually robbing us of our wealth over time. And so in the meantime, he just looks at it and it's like, well, the Fed's going to stop my booming economy, without even realizing the fact that he's writing prior rates, right? It takes a while for this stuff to circulate and for the money and for people's evaluations to adjust and for the economy to finally realize, oh, we don't have as many goods as these dollars made us believe, and so on and so forth. So just like in his prior presidency, he was riding Obama's and the Fed's low interest rates that he came into. And then, when things started shoring up, again, I'm pretty sure he said the same thing in the prior campaign about the interest rate, where they're trying to destroy my economy. It's like, dude, you're just basically accepting and promoting the same nonsense. You want them to lower the interest rate, create more fake money, easy access to money, loan out this fake money, spur on the production that your nationalist daydreams think, make you think are good, give it to certain domestic producers, blah, 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 and then you're going to try to use the force of the state to block foreign investment. So basically, just the point of this is I'm trying to illustrate, it might be a little bit too specific or abstract for this individual and for other individuals, and maybe a little bit too much filled with jargon, I guess. Like, I'm not a trained or even educated in economics, but I've read quite a bit, and it's not complicated. It's really not complicated. It's super straightforward. We all kind of intuitively understand this stuff, but I'm trying to explain, like, dude, as a MAGAcrat, you yourself believe in the same underlying principles. And then, so the next, regulate international trade to make prices, quote, more fair, which is rhetoric that the followers have precisely used. Unfair pricing, or they're even saying they're throwing around the word price gouging now. When when the Democrats want to impose price controls, the Republicans recognize that there's no such thing as price gouging, and who are you to tell us and stuff like this. And then, but when they turn around and for nationalist nonsense reasons, it's okay because we're being gouged by these pharmaceutical companies. And then it was before, weeks ago as well, I've also been accused of supporting, the pharmaceutical companies in poisoning us because I don't believe that state regulation as proposed by Kennedy is going to help. And the whole premises of it is just the same authoritarian socialist concept, right? Like, even back before it was FDA and the government needs to get out of our food. when Obama was in office, and probably even just weeks ago or months ago rather, when Biden was in office, I'm sure you could have weaseled through their minds to get them to say that, ask them the right questions, and get them to say, well, no, we don't want the FDA monopolizing or regulating or anything, and then but now it's like they pick these little innocuous things, like right, okay, you're putting what is a lot of people consider is and has been proven in some ways, I guess, to be unhealthy for people. um, so they go after something that, right, it's easy for them to turn it around and say, well, what are you okay with them selling us poison? And then now you have to go in, you have to say no, and then you have to cut them off before they say, well, then why are you against this law? And you then explain why the market can work through that, and how we can do that with private law, how we can do that with contract and everything else. It's like, so it's easy for them to just cut to the state issuing commands, whereas we kind of have to explain the basics of economics, a little bit of legal theory, and how common law could work, and how markets can provide law and lawsuits and action against people if they poison you and things like this. So it's really easy for them to just get swept up into this, whereas we have a little bit more. Again, it is simple. The economics of it is simple anyway. Having working around a person's tangled up mind, and how we can go after a person who's selling poison without a monopoly doing it is a little bit trickier. So, and it always kind of just devolves into them praying to the state basically, and you trying to say no, 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 that's nonsense, blah blah blah. Here's why we can show that, and so on and so forth. But so it's the same thing now. If I don't believe in Donald Trump's price controls, I'm okay with price gouging. Now, instead of that, I have to explain why price gouging is a nonsense concept to begin with, right? So, MAGAcrats are socialists. There are other types of socialism besides Marxism, right? You can believe all of the same fundamental principles, and even though act as if. See, here's the thing: is it's interesting because the Marxists kind of, in the end, Marxism boils down to totalitarianism in all manner of life. As Hayek said, to be controlled on our economic pursuits means to be controlled in everything. The implications of controlling our economic decisions trickle into our entire lives, right? The MAGAcrats, they think, you can say they're not socialists because they don't parrot the workers' ownership of means of production line, but really the MAGAcrats act as if that's already what this is, right? They act as if we already all mutually share in ownership of all of the land, essentially. And that's why the state's pronouncements regarding which so-called foreign people can come in, which so-called foreign investment can take place, and things like this are justified in their mind, because they also believe the fundamental principle that leads to all of the Marxist nonsense, which is that we all own all of this land collectively, basically. And then they view the state as our chosen steward and manager of our collective affairs, which, they are managing some collective affairs. Yes, you can say that, but they're not really voluntary, right? We didn't voluntarily go into this contract. We don't own any property in common. Anybody who by chance is listening to this, I mean, even if I know you, we don't actually share any property together. We don't mutually own anything. So the way that they attempt to manage these things is inherently flawed, because you're going to be sucking people's other property into your collective perception, right? Because it's not explicitly a contract. They don't. The state is like this gray, foggy area where people don't have to think. They think they don't have to think about how property works and everything else. So that's still the first cigarette. It died out too. I'm not that crazy of a smoker, but yeah. So, and then so a little bit, regulate international trade to make prices more fair and funnel funds into nationalist favored endeavors, subsidies. Right. So like it's just the same thing. The state coercion to redistribute wealth into other people's hands, basically, and they say it's okay because our plans are actually going to benefit the country. When it's like, well, I mean, dude, it's the same thing a Democrat thinks. You guys just might use different words, but the Democrat just the same. He wants to use state force to funnel quote our money into things he thinks are going to benefit the country. Like you don't like you might look at the politicians and think that they definitely want to be predators and take our money and basically enslave us in the long run in covered in euphemisms. But you know, it's wild to run around thinking that every single person who believes in democracy or who is a Democrat believes that. Most people don't. Most people think what they're doing is the right thing and is just and is right by the so-called people and everything. Nobody runs around, I want a government that does bad things that are bad for the so-called country, right? Like so, but it's the same thing that it's all state worshippers do this. They're blinded, but they accept the idea that some people have the right to rule others. So when these individuals, through whatever ritual that they do, they basically just get together, line up who is the most popular, who do we think should tell us what to do, and then that's what they do. And often they give us really well, when you're an anarchist, you realize what they're saying is total nonsense. But to a common statist, they'll give you lies that sound like they're good, but then they'll do opposite. And even the statists, like with Trump, I remember back in the Obama era and all that. He's a flip flopper. That was like a big thing on the news on Fox and stuff. Where if you changed your views, like if by chance you grew in your perspective and maybe don't agree with what you used to think, you're a flip flopper. But of course, that's in a sense they're right in criticizing politicians because these people, they don't ever say, oh, I was wrong about that. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, yeah, okay, my mistake. Or I was a commie then, and now I'm not. Here's why I think I was wrong then versus why I think I'm right now. They don't actually say that. They just flip. They literally do just like flip script on what they're doing. Or they go on TV and say one thing and do the opposite and just act as if it just nothing happened. And that we see that happening with the Trump people where Trump is pro-peace. He's anti-war. He's not going to bomb anybody. Then he bombs somebody, and everybody's just like, well, we wanted to bomb Iran anyway. Iran's no good. We need to. Oh, do you want? It's the same thing like I was saying about the regulation. Oh, do you want Iran to have nuclear weapons? Blah 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 blah. So it's all the same thing. So it's just ironic that a MAGA-crat would share this. I constantly try to explain to this guy and these people why they are socialists, but I mean, I guess I'm not doing a good enough job because he's still kind of on some silliness. But so I'm just going to go through my timeline. I keep a lot of lefty stuff on my timeline, so I'll have some stuff to criticize or why do we have wars? We were ruled by an elite group of psychopaths who own the banks, control the governments, media. Yeah, I guess, sort of, kind of. It's more of like a symbiotic relationship. They fund both sides of war for profit, and they manufacture the consent of the public through propaganda media. Yeah, close enough. It's not even worth kind of. I mean, clearly, I'm going to say more perfect union. Definitely a bunch of socialists, but yeah, that one's pretty close. I'm not going to bother with it. If you weren't calling to abolish ICE when it was controlled by Obama, then you're not opposed to fascism. I mean, fair enough, but most people weren't. I mean, the chance that this op even are, I would say, pretty low. Statists don't pay attention. Can I comment on here still? Yeah, okay. I thought maybe they prevented me. But yeah, I mean, there's probably more I can go into that but that's basically it. It's just the chances that you even know what the hell you're talking about now are like practically zero. So like libertarians, anarchists are really the only ones that really, really understand what the hell is going on. Now, I'm sure I can go to that guy's page. I know that page is a lefty page and find something where basically their logic implies totalitarianism. So you didn't say, so here they are mimicking FDR, basically. This is basically what he was saying back in the day, and then they eventually found it, and now it's just kind of turned into a random meme that trending videos in the world just kind of puts up there with no quotes and stuff. If they, maybe, so political atheism is a page I always go and talk trash on, and to their credit, they have not yet blocked me, and it's been some time. I mean, I get blocked from Marxist pages all the time. Probably they rationalize as I'm some sort of fascist who doesn't want government to exist, but it's interesting, though, because they used to say that raising the minimum wage didn't affect job growth. and they kind of just steamrolled past that when the internet made it a little bit too obvious. And given the fact that you can do some research and read these economists and read the data and look at what's happening. I kind of want to make a comment on here about how they, but it's tough though, because I've been harping on this for going on 12 years, right? So I've heard basically every state worship rationalization that you could hear. And I want to say, well, it used to be that I thought raising the minimum wage didn't affect businesses, which is what the lefties used to say to get out of it. And now they, like I said, they just gloss right past that. But who knows if these people even remember those arguments, because the state of the nature of the state and the state of so-called politics in the United States at this point has gotten people so polarized that there's a lot of more, I think, new people that were not really paying attention, and in the last 8 years or so especially have started paying attention, which even before I was an anarchist, I was out there protesting with the commies and stuff. I was a communist back then, and I was pretty active, going to like Occupy, going to other events that would come around, that would pop off in the area and stuff. So, and always proliferating propaganda. So, it's hard to tell, because even though I've only been an anarchist for 12 years, I was a communist for some time before that, for probably about a decade. So it's like an active, so my political bent didn't really stop. It just changed when I realized that communism is nonsense. So I don't know if it's even worth saying that shit there, because these people, so many people are new, so many people don't pay any goddamn attention to anything. They've never actually read any of Marx, even though they're posting on a Marx page about blah 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 blah. And then I got a video on here where I just posted part of the Communist Manifesto. I'm like, dude, what do you mean? Marx said the state should do this, and Marx said that Marx and Engels said this and that. And then I posted it, and he's like, no, they didn't. They said this. And he posted something from another Engels post, which basically just backed up my argument. But then I posted something from the manifesto, and he's like, where'd you get that quote? It's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, how do you not know this? Like, that's what, like, the first thing they get. Like, when you join a communist party, the Communist Party, but like, you should know the Communist Manifesto, even if you're not a tanky or whatever. Like, you're going to sit here and talk about Marxism, and you don't know their most popular pamphlet. Like, so that's who we're dealing with here, right? So it's like, do they even remember when people? I'd have to go find a video, which I'm sure I could, and be like, remember when minimum wage didn't affect businesses, and now you're basically acknowledging that it did. You're basically acknowledging that it does, and saying not only does that happen, but we're going to use force to shut it down because, well, I guess I didn't read this all the way. Usually this is, but it's basically the same thing, because obviously, usually it is, if it would collapse, you didn't deserve to exist. Your business didn't deserve to exist anyway. But I mean, this is basically the same thing, because unless I can get a commie to say exploitation schemes deserve to exist, it's basically the same logic, right? So anyway, it's way easier to be a quote liberal than it is to be a conservative or libertarian. Fairy tales are easy to sell. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I would actually kind of argue against that, but it's harder to become. I mean, I don't know about a conservative. That's nonsense still. Like, you're still just a state worshiper. But I don't know. I kind of get their logic, but because technically government is like, you've abdicated your thought process to politicians. What you think, when you think force should be done, even though you think that statists think that they have a perspective on that, and then they want the politician to impose that. But really, the problem is more so that when the politician does things that everybody recognizes would be immoral, people literally perceive them differently. So, yeah. I guess it's harder to become a libertarian, but it's way easier to be a libertarian, because, I mean, government is piles and piles and piles upon piles of lies and rationalizations to try to make sense of what's going on in the world, and they still and it doesn't make any sense, right? So I think it's a lot harder because you're consistently getting slapped in the face with reality as a statist, and your brain's just constantly like hair trigger on rationalization and dissonance mode. It's just like you're constantly like da, 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 and then you get angry, and then you're like commies, you know, and then you whatever you just refer to. We need to obey the laws. People get mad. I got immigrants. I got family who are legal immigrants, and they get mad when people skirt the law. Someone said in a post the other day, and it's just, what are you even saying, Don? Your family gets mad that people ignore politicians. There's that 24 authoritarians types of authoritarians comic, and one of them is Stockholm syndrome, and that's clearly it because. And he says, when I started a business, I had to jump through all these bureaucratic hoops, so it's important to me that you do as well. And that's exactly the same thing, right? It's Stockholm syndrome and victim blaming. Interesting. What's going on here? I guess nothing. Okay, so let's see what says. Johnny Thomas Swole doesn't exist. He can't hurt you. The problem isn't that Johnny can't read. The problem isn't even that Johnny can't think. The problem is that Johnny doesn't know what thinking is. He confuses it with feeling. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Funny how so many Trump voters now view themselves as betrayed victims instead of. Oh, that's Larkin making this. I was going to say, well, I mean, at least they're recognizing that, sort of. I don't know. I mean, I guess, yeah. Well, it is a good point. Like, they just kind of rolled right past the fact that they theoretically put this dude in power, and they just go to, well, how dare he betray us, instead of recognizing the fact that you're the boob who put him there. You said this fool should go there. So I will say, though, on a different note, that Dave Smith actually recently apologized for being a dupe, basically. I don't know exactly what he said. I caught a glimpse of it, but I was like, okay, that's good. At least he's kind of thinking. Of course, it could just be, again, it's like, dude, it's become, you're like, when you're dealing with libertarians, I know people think we're stupid and blind and morons, but we're actually some of the most astute observers of political action. So um, maybe he just thought that it was too obvious. He can't continue to dupe us. Too many of us realize that it's like, bro, Trump is a fucking moron. Authoritarian socialist just the same. And then, because Dave Smith came out as he didn't, I don't, interesting if he apologized for that, but he did come out and say, I'm in favor of mass deportations. Like, what are you talking about? How could you even possibly say that and consider yourself a libertarian? Interesting. Well, okay, so it says said I got disconnected. Let's see. Let me go make sure I'm still going here. Do, 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 do. Let us see if we are still live. If I am. What the fuck is going on? I guess we're still going. I'm wondering if it's glitching out on you or something, but I guess I'll see. Oh, this post earlier. Yeah, what a joke. I mean, it's none of this is a joke because it's actually quite serious and carries grave implications. But this page itself has posted all sorts of FDR stuff. I'm pretty sure. If memory serves, I could go here and find something that this group posted from FDR, probably about the new Bill of Rights or the thing I was just talking about. How your business shouldn't exist if you can't pay what the state says you have to. But George Takei, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I know who he is, but how to pronounce it. But you know, I love the fact I love who he is. I love Star Trek. I love science fiction. So more power to him. But his politics, you know, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Now the fact that he's, sort of correct on this. It's just the hypocrisy. Like, bro, I'm sure I can go to his page and find something where he was worshiping FDR over some nonsense. But the point is they're planning on building a blah blah blah. They sent me and my family in 1942 to blah 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 whatever. I'm not reading it correctly, but you get the gist. It was like, dude, this was your Democrat socialist hero FDR that did this. So same thing, different side of the coin, where they're failing to see the ills of of people that they themselves claim to support, right? Like, anytime I see this, when a socialist or a leftist is comparing this, if there's an end where I can be like, dude, that was FDR, I usually try to inform them of that history. Like, are you not paying attention that this was FDR that did this? Like, what is it about socialists and putting people in camps? They seem to love that. So, oh man, I don't know. I guess I'm not sure how long I've been ranting here, but Congress has the authority to declare war. Blah blah blah. I don't necessarily care about any of that stuff. Federal courts can no longer pause unconstitutional executive orders. Whatever vestiges of checks and balances officially gone. You are ruled by a tyrant. And see, it's like, okay, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's interesting because it relates to this stuff up here, but in a sense. But it's like, dude, this page has no idea what the Constitution even means, what it was supposed to be. Like, it's so crazy that they can pick certain things. Like, when did you, like, if this guy was some nonsense, Marxist up there talking about how he was going to give everybody $60 an hour minimum wage, you people would not give a damn about what the Constitution says, because even babbling that nonsense, it's so far beyond anything of what the United States Constitution was supposed to authorize and be. Like, minimum wage, the welfare state, none of that stuff should exist according to the United States Constitution, and most especially, at least not on a federal level. So, like, what these people, it's just they pick and choose, and again, and this part right here just kind of shows that they really don't know what they're talking about, because this is old news. You know what I mean? Like, that's what the state is. So it would be no different if your group of people picked, you were the majority and you picked some politician to order us all around. You're just doing the same thing, so, and anybody who didn't consent, anybody who voted against and lost, obviously, from their perspective, and in reality, it's objectively the same thing, because he did not consent to that person. So he is being tyrannized by the threat of force, by a group of people. And then what's funny here, okay, so here's a great one. Trump won in an election of the citizens by the country. Well, tell me more about democracy, bro. Like, that's so funny to me when they say this, because it's just, dude, I don't understand how it's not like just bleeding. It's just so obvious how all these people believe the same nonsense. The president isn't supposed to create laws. I mean, that's like semantic nonsense. Rule by decree. Like, I mean, there's literally a thing called an executive order, my guy. Like, or have unchecked power, you dunce. Like, yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny, like, seeing state worshippers. Like, this, if you believe in government, you believe that the state should have unchecked power. It doesn't matter about your nonsense rationalizations. Even in the best case of so-called democracy, it's just the majority ganging up and forcing themselves on everyone else. So where's the checked power, bro? Like, you got to vote. Well, you lost the vote, dude, and the state still coerces you to obey. So the state is the separation of power. The separation of power is the state is the monopoly on power. So it's so funny seeing state worshippers go at each other when it's like you're really actually not arguing about anything. Oh boy, Mr. Reich. He's a funny one. Corporate profits have hit record highs. CEOs 290x as much as typical workers, subsidizing huge corporations that pay lousy wages instead of cracking down on corporate greed. Okay, accidentally correct on this one. Like, yeah, sure. But obviously his solutions would be nonsensical. See, there you go. Let's end food stamps. There you go. Right. And I mean, yeah, food stamps, Medicaid. I mean, he didn't put subsidies in there, so. I mean, I want to tell him, like, also corporate subsidies, though. I don't know. I don't understand why he wouldn't have said that. I mean, I guess that's his conservative bias showing. I don't know. That page seems pretty decent. Iran war stuff. I honestly haven't been paying enough attention for all that stuff. But politicians bombing people, committing murder. That's what they do. Hopefully, you guys wake up. So they can denaturalize and deport anyone who opposes them. Yeah, that's pretty much goes without saying. They're talking about stripping Mamdani's citizenship because he won an election as a Demsoc. I mean, really though, see this part, stripping citizenship. You kick him out of office. I mean, dude, you should. It's funny because they say like I'm an authoritarian, but it's like, dude, the fact that a person who calls themselves a democratic socialist even got in office is like, dude. Again, this guy was just talking about the U.S. Constitution, this dystopian daily. But he thinks a democratic demsoc it makes any type of sense in context of what the United States government and economy should be, according to the so-called founders and the authorities, so-called, set forth in the Constitution. Which, yeah, obviously it's a state charter nonsense document, but it was way better than any of this democratic socialist nonsense where the government regulates the economy until we're basically starving to death. And well, it didn't happen in Sweden, and it's like, well, yeah, well, they have a pretty fair, a pretty free market economy in a lot of ways out there. So they recognize that the market is where wealth comes from. I don't know if that got cut off, but they at least retain that. Uh, the Scandinavian countries, that is, they still at least recognize that free markets are where the wealth comes from. They have not strangled their markets so much. Whereas, and pretty much like a lot of the stuff that they do in Scandinavia, like heavily, their state is heavily voucher. All of their services, not all of them, but a lot of them, they embrace voucher systems. They have privatized Social Security, privatized pension plans. Um, you know, no minimum wage. They do have a lot of other regulations, though, as far as like unions and things like that, union membership. But again, it's still like over here they would, the so-called Demsocs and Bernie Sanders and them. They hate vouchers. They would die if you would propose the idea of privatizing Social Security. So they strangle the market. At least in those European countries, they allow some liberalization of the markets. More than here, honestly, and that's honestly where their growth comes from. Obviously, I mean that's where all growth comes from. I don't understand how socialists can't see this. All growth comes from our personal economic endeavors. Quote, we the people are the ones creating the wealth. The state just siphons it off and sends it to programs that the statists think people wouldn't do if the government didn't force us to. Even though at the same time they'll say, well, people want these things, so that's why we got to tax us for it. It's like, well, what do you mean? You're saying there's a demand, but then you're saying that the only way that we could do this is if we force them, because nobody would do this. Well, there's no profit motive, blah blah blah. And it's, well, you think that you're an altruist, and apparently you're going to find all of these benevolent politicians to take our money and help the poor. So why do you have so little faith in like the group of people you're going to pick the politicians from? That doesn't make any sense. Trump will likely use his war with Iran as a pretext to further suppress dissent. Oh, that's funny. It's just like calling the kettle black, dude. It's like every politician does that. Like we have been telling you that for decades, and we were crazy. Dear Democrat Party, take off the fucking gloves and do whatever the fuck it takes to preserve the rule of law. Get the fuck out of my face, dude. Like, I mean, even the rule of law is a nonsense concept anyway, but um, it's just like people are such blind hypocrites. It's mind blowing. Like none of you guys even understand what that term means. You're just with your tariff arguments too. You know, the lefties don't actually understand what they're saying. If they did, they would realize that it applies to everything that they believe. If you're opposed to tariffs, like why are you not opposed to domestic trade controls? Like what do you like? It's the same exact thing, dude. And the guy just lives farther away. Oh man, the left tried to call him weird. The rhino said he's too young. The rhinos, and that's another thing too. Like the MAGAcrats have stolen that word. Like they're calling Massey a rhino. They're calling Thomas Massey a rhino. It's like, dude, that's what we called you guys. That's you guys, bro. That's Mitt Romney and all these clowns, man. Sarah Palin, jeez. Proving the haters wrong is the best VP of my lifetime. Like, what the fuck does a VP? Like, okay. Oh god, dude, state worshippers are hilarious. Every time your politician gets in power, he's the best one in your lifetime and shit. Like he's fucking. Oh god. Oh man. Oh boy. I know this looks bad. At least the other party didn't win. Yeah, that's a good one. This guy. Okay. LP. Fair enough. We'll riot for money. This guy again. This is that same fool. Magacrat. Foolish. So here, okay, now we're rationalizing, state coercion. Um, yeah, we're going to say something about that. Oh, man. Jeez, I crack myself up. Um, it's just like this. What's funny is I like to think like, what would this person think if they saw it? Clearly, there's 2.8 thousand comments on here, but what's a person think when he sees that? Like, does he think that I'm actually in favor of government regulation? Does he take pause for a brief moment to think about the fact that he's the one who supports government regulation, and he also thinks that basically this post is just cheering on, the state regulation of, because the only thing they could say is that they either realize that they're a dupe or they come at me with, well, so you're okay with them poisoning us, and then like I said, I have to go into, no, but we can handle that without a state regulating, monopolist. I don't even care about that guy anymore. He's boring. Pro-capitalism thinking profit should go to the soft-handed, yacht-faring elites instead of the workers who actually created the problems. I don't have enough time to get into all that right now, but yeah, obviously you're wrong. This person, she sucks. 47,000 followers. Jesus. She sucks. She's always constantly making excuses for the state. And it's like, okay, yeah, fair enough. This is old news, though. This guy's a hack. I hate people who just worship this dude. But yeah, okay. Ultimately correct. This guy, not so consistent. There's a major information operation in play. Be frosty. What the fuck does that even mean? Something very disturbing how the U.S. names its weapons after Native Americans it genocided. Yeah, that is kind of an interesting point, I will say. Fair enough. And people are laughing about it. It's like, that's like where it's like, I mean, why did you laugh at that? I don't know. Like, yeah, I would imagine that this dude's probably like a socialist, but so that doesn't make that any less scummy. New Yorkers forgot all about the victims of 9. Oh, I've seen this. Yeah, right. I mean, this is just. Yeah, this person is an idiot. This Laura Loomer, for sure. because they say this stuff. Statists are just not nuanced in any of their so-called analyses. They just blanket stereotype everybody. Everybody does it. Both sides, all statists, they can't help it. It's baked into their self-contradictory beliefs. Germany was once so fascist that criticizing those in power gets you arrested. Yeah, good call, Larkin. Several gangs in India are reportedly trucing so they can accompany people to their immigration hearings and prevent ICE from abducting them. And it's effective because ICE officials are afraid of them, which is why ICE goes after assimilated immigrants with families. Cool, but you're a state worshiper, so if it were your politicians coming to collect money from the greedy capitalist who you think isn't paying enough, even though everybody's there voluntarily, you would be cheering them on. It wouldn't be ICE, but it would be some other state agent. So this is, kind of. It's not the true view because really there's a complete divide, like right here. And then everybody over here is on the same side, and we're alone, the only individuals who think there should not be a state. Let's see. Abolish ICE sounds like you're calling for open borders. Yes. Well, that makes sense. We have completed our very successful blah blah blah. I've seen this. What are they talking about? See, so here we are in the LP. It's so funny. We bombed these motherfuckers. Now's the time for peace. God damn, dude. State worshippers are dumb. And then I guess this guy. Oh, that's a private group. Fuck, my bad. Still, the fact that that's good enough. We saw that some idiot posted that in there. How is that even in there? As with no context or anything. It's okay, dude. Yeah. You're not a libertarian, my guy. I don't know what to tell you. Get over the loss of California because it happened 200 years ago, but support Israel. That's fair. Oh, self-governance. Yeah, you're making sense. You know how to use your brain more than most people, anyway. Okay, let's think this. The people crying about minimum wage being unlivable are the same ones saying farms can't run without cheap illegal labor. Yeah, fair enough. But I guess I got nothing to say to that. But the problem is this person's. I just don't understand how a person even comes at these guys like that. We should also what does illegal labor even mean? That's the argument that we need to be making. This group, stop blaming capitalism for socialism failures. These magocrat socialists are everywhere. And, the argument really from a libertarian perspective is that there's no such thing as that. The state has no right to declare who can work for who or who can move where or who you can sell your house to or have over for dinner or how much you have to pay or any of that. So it is interesting, though. It's a fair, I'd say that's a decent observation of their contradictions because the logic contradicts, right? So, right, they should also be, well, they don't, I guess not necessarily, because I could say that, yeah, obviously your wage would be, quote, unlivable, but I'm not going to then say that the state needs to mandate a price floor. Um, the wage needs to be bid up, or that's what the market can bear right now. That's what consumers in the company. Now, of course, it's not my right to say how much profit a person should make. Objectively, if we look at the maths, we can obviously say, well, yeah, there's room for this guy to lose profit to pay more to the workers, but it's not my right to say that he has to do that, right? So, at that point, the socialists need to, live up to what they claim, which is that the workers or that the capitalist is more dependent on the workers, even though it's interdependent. But and walk. They need to walk instead of griping and moaning about a guy they think's a scumbag and then getting maybe a couple bucks at the most extra an hour. So I mean that's interesting, but of course he's illegal labor. To even think that's a thing shows that you perceive the state to own all of the land. So here's just another magacrat socialist making nonsense. um, Yeah, I mean that's not. Well, I mean, what do you mean by fix wages? Because that's what the state's trying to do is fix wages. I mean, literally, that's Brooks and Brooke. That is Trump's entire campaign is just price manipulation. So he's calling it fixing it. It's too low. These wages are too low. We need higher wages. Like, dude, you're a fucking socialist. What are you even telling me right now? That's not how any of this works. So it's just unreal. 2 days ago, this post from already. So, oh jeez, I haven't been on this page in a while. So here's an interesting one with he quotes Trump. This is politics these days. This is the quote that deserves to get cited from our fucking commander in chief, so called. Powell is the worst, all caps. A real dummy who's costing America billions. What is this guy even talking about? Like, these people are socialist morons. Like, Keynesian nonsense. Now, I'm not trying to side with the Fed. I think the Federal Reserve should be completely abolished, which is the argument and is what should actually be talking about. Trump comes in there and he's literally repeating textbook Keynesianism. We need to lower the interest rate. The economy's slowing down. We need to start slushing some money out into the economy so people start spending. And of course, we're going to give it to war corporations and the farmers, of course, and whatever other, in the first term he was giving it, he was giving subsidies to pharmaceutical companies that manufactured vaccines and medicines in America. So it's still just economic manipulation. It's still just socialism. And it is closer to fascism, or more properly National Socialism in the German variety. Minus, it doesn't necessarily have to do with anything about being racist. It's just the economics of it all. They strong arm the economy, but they still allow like the facade of private property, whereas the Marxists completely nationalize everything. Basically, the Marxists, technically don't allow private property, though really in actuality all it is the state owns everything. It's still, so-called private property. It's just the state has monopolized it all. Whereas the National Socialists, right, they like let people own businesses and things like that, but they strong-armed them through manipulation or just outright coercion through the state, which is more like what the Republicans and the Democrats do. It is more like it's even softer than the Nazis did, obviously. I guess they wised up. They got, they realized they need to allow a little bit more, and they definitely cannot use the same rhetoric as the Nazis, which, of course, after a while, it became increasingly totalitarian. Of course, at the beginning, it was the nation this, the nation that. We're going to make things great, and yeah, those regulations and stuff. But, it's just mind blowing that these people can't see. Like, even just when Obama was in office, which was some time ago now, but when Obama was in office, the conservatives basically understood how this was a scam, how the Fed lowered the rate, and also even before Obama, before the housing market crashed, that had a lot to do with what happened with the housing market. Is that the state loosened up the interest rates. The state started giving these firms all of this fake money, lowered the interest rate, made it easier to borrow money. The Fed pumped a bunch of fake cash, which gave people the ability to give out all of these subprime loans, which then they did with adjustable rates. I mean, it was completely manufactured by my perspective. Like, somebody had to have known what was going to happen here. It's baked right into what happened. Like, you gave subprime adjustable rate mortgages to people, and then they all basically flipped their rates at the same time. So it's like, but in order to do that, in order to allow these firms to make these bad loans, they had to lower the interest rate to pump this fake cash into there. That was where they got the money from in order to do this. Lower interest rate means money is easier to borrow. So that's exactly, and this is just what Trump is doing here. So if Trump gets his way and they start pumping, out fake cash and making it easier to borrow, what they usually do is they do that in order to subsidize firms. That's probably what this is for. He's going to give it to, and then they're going to claim that the economy is growing, when really all you're doing is siphoning wealth from the economy and giving it to someone else. So, and then this guy's, of course, he makes this post as if, Powell is the bad guy, and the Federal Reserve is so sinister that they actually have, the logic of their economics is actually that the Federal Reserve is in the right at this point. So, but only within their system. Ultimately, they still need to be abolished. It's not like in the meantime we shouldn't raise rates. No, in the meantime we should just be abolishing the Federal Reserve. But this is the improper. This is the improper economic position. If you think you believe in freedom, you should get rid of the central bank. But most especially, you should not be wanting them to lower interest rates to inflate the currency again, or further. So it's unfortunate and it's mind-boggling how conservatives used to understand this when Obama was in office, how they manipulated the money, but now they don't. And not only do they, well, it's weird because they sort of do, but now they want them to do what they do that they didn't want when Obama was in office. So, you think the Democratic establishment cares about people? You've got this superstar candidate. Oh yeah, they're all. This was from quite some days ago, almost a week ago, but. Yeah, they're talking about the Muslim guy, I think, the socialist we were just talking about a little while ago. When I randomly remember growth and pace, and 78 is up just 18, but yeah, I mean, okay. We'll get into all of that right now. I mean, wages usually are the last to adjust. They need to stop trying to regulate themselves into prosperity, though. Who isn't a war criminal? Well, yeah, okay. This guy sucks, though. He's okay. Nah, he's a commie. So, but I will say, so the people who started off like considering themselves anarchists, but they're socialists, they at least, this stuff was pretty old hat to them, even though they kind of have the wrong perspective on economics. They're, socialist anarchists are still usually pretty good at criticizing the government, at least. It's a country. See, like this qualifier, though, again, it's like that's what all states are, built and sustained by words. That's their only institution. That's their only law. Why is that? This is what the U.S. is. Well, that's what every state is. Well, I mean, so we'll see how logically consistent that person or these people are. Because yeah, that's what every state is. So it's weird that like, and then they didn't even put that as a caption. Like if I were going to share this on my page, being an anarchist, I would have had to have said that's what every state is, because this right here, this language implies like there could be a state that wasn't this, that wasn't quote war criminals. I mean, the state is war against first the people that it first subjugates, the so-called citizens. So. Yeah, I'm going to say this person doesn't fully understand what's going on. All of the socialists could meet up, gather all of the wealth, and then divide it between themselves. This has never happened. I mean, that's not exactly, the second part's not exactly true, but yeah, that's pretty basic, probably too basic for anybody to really understand unless you already understand what socialism is. So, like, actually understand it, not think you understand it and then advocate it. Because if you still advocate it, you don't understand what it is. Capitalists cause problems in other countries, then blame them for it. Blame who? Oh, the other country. Duh. Socialism sucks. Venezuelans are suffering from a food shortage and a toilet paper crisis because, well, this is just nonsense. They're blaming. Yeah, I mean they are blocking food shipments. So yeah, you can't do this. But why do you need food shipments? Of course you could always say, well, they're an island, or well, Venezuela's. I'm thinking of Cuba, but. You can say they're isolated, whatever. But still, this is the thing. I kind of want to say, it's probably the state shipping in this food, as opposed to the market. So, market actors. But I mean, there's so much that we could get into here, but if I were to say, well, why do they need to ship food in if socialism creates so much abundance? And they could just obviously make the proper answer and say, well, they don't have X resource or whatever, so they can't produce it there. So, but then again, still, it's like your market is going, or your society is going to be stifled by the lethargic monstrosity that is the centrally planning state. So, you're always going to be misallocating resources. There's going to be shortages. You can't ever possibly control the economy. Uh, let's see. Well, I mean, like, see, like the Democrats that you hate are not liberals. None of you guys are actually liberals. I'm gonna. Yeah, Democrats are not liberals. Yeah, Democrats are not liberals. Libertarians are liberals. Anarchists are the most liberal. There we go. 2 days ago, still, but still, I had to throw that one out there. So because this gets under my skin just as much as when a Republican shows up and he starts calling Democrats liberals. All these liberals, they want to control the economy. It's that's not what that word means, man. And you guys are just repeating this propaganda. And then because it's a package deal. There's a really good video by Roderick Long where he basically is saying that capitalism and socialism are what are called anti-concepts, which was put forth by Ayn Rand. But it's a package deal, right? So, okay, so they lump together, they have this concept liberalism, and what they have done is they've lumped it together depending on which side of the so-called aisle you are on. You will have different constellations, I think, for what liberalism means. But like if you're, well, I guess not really. It's just you would actually oppose the opposite aspects, right? So you have two concepts that are lumped together under liberalism, and then if you're a lefty, you're going to oppose one section of those, and if you're a righty, you're going to oppose the other section of those. And those two, obviously, what they have done is liberalism it now means what it historically meant to the leftists, which is I think these guys they don't like the liberals as because they don't want to vote for an outright socialist. So to them, that's liberalism. That's they still support capitalism and such. And for the conservative side, they think that the liberals are bad because they want to regulate the economy, which both of them are essentially correct because liberal has been turned into this package deal anti-concept where the Democrats are liberals because they believe in the welfare state and they think that the government should help people. That means liberal now. And to the lefties, they think that the conservatives are liberals because they at least parrot some free market economic rhetoric, right? So, and that is actually the more historically accurate concept of liberalism is the free market position, which is why I say the libertarians are the liberals and the anarchists are just like the liberals that, as Benjamin Tucker said, unterrified Jeffersonian Democrats. Like we just go all the way through, right? We take the logic all the way to the end. So we take the liberal tradition to its logical conclusion. Even if you were a so-called socialist anarchist, in being an anarchist, you would have to by default be a liberal, right? Because you don't want the state involved in anything. You know, if you're logically consistent anyway. My cat wants to come in the room. Let's see. Come on, buddy. What's up? No, don't jump on my chair. I'm ranting on the internet. Good buddies, how's you doing? Oh, good kitty kitty. All right. Oh. All right, so let's see what else we got going on here on these crazy interwebs this morning. 8:15. No idea how long I've been ranting. At least an hour, probably. Um, I guess maybe I'll wrap it up. It's not too eventful. Oh, you know what? Let's go to Twitter. There's a lot of. This is the one I did want to talk about first. I found it pretty funny where someone calls me Democrat because I support Thomas Massie. That hasn't happened to me. I'm pretty sure liberal has happened, and they think they definitely call Massie a rhino, which it's like you guys clearly have no idea what that even means. But yeah, definitely Massie is more MAGA than Trump. Trump wants to make the state great again, right? He wants to use government regulation to make prices more fair and all of this other socialist nonsense that they don't realize is socialist. But yeah, I mean, we are Massey anyway is way closer to the historical concept of the United States than Trump is. I mean, that guy's an idiot, Donald Trump. Oh, and then so I guess they're running this ad, and but they're saying is that Massey opposed this bill which bans the child sex changes, but actually Massey is saying that they stripped that part out of the bill, so the bill effectively would allow it. It's not actually prohibiting it, but oh, here it is. The BBB now allows funding sex changes for minors. This ad slams me for voting against the BBB, but the Senate just stripped the ban on sex changes for minors from the BBB. By the ad's twisted logic, those who support the Senate's edits now support sex changes for minors. So, yeah, but that's for the longest I was like, man, this how do people fall for this Trump? I mean, his propaganda is really bad. It's if you have any understanding of laissez-faire philosophy, then it's very transparent. But um, this is a little bit better. Like this is a pretty good example of how these guys do propaganda on your brain. um, it's hard for me to say any of Trump's examples are good because it's so transparent collectivism that it's not good. You guys are just not thinking, which statism that's what it'll do to you. It doesn't have much to do about thinking. Let's see what's happening in the news on Twitter. Nothing that I'm too interested in, I guess. Let's see what's happening with this. Fascism. Yeah, that's pretty funny, I guess. It's not funny. It's observant. A Republican president could nominate as many as 4 Supreme Court justices. I mean, well, why is that any more terrifying than if the Democrats could do that? Which, I mean, I imagine that they could. I don't know exactly what they're talking about. There must have been something going on, or if that's just how it works, it's like, well, Democrats could do that too. You guys don't seem too different to me. And I'm sure they'll say that's just because I don't know what I'm talking about, but it's like I can demonstrate how you guys believe the same stuff. So, I mean, like literally, it's just me being an anarchist right there should show anybody who's trying to use their brain that you as a statist have more in common with Donald Trump than I do as an anarchist. Like, you guys might think you have fundamental differences, but when it comes down to it, you believe in all of the fundamentals of the monopoly on force. So, bickering over what the monopoly orders us to do is not really a productive argument. Well, I mean, I guess I'll take that back. It can be because, given the fact that everybody believes in the state, if those seem like your best options, right? Like if it was Thomas Massey versus Donald Trump, I mean, I'm an anarchist, but obviously I would choose Massey over Trump if those were the only options I had. People just really, they need to realize that those aren't the only options. We also have the option of getting rid of the state. It is an option. Difficult for most people to fathom, but nonetheless, it is an option. So, I mean, there is some benefit to discussing policy versus policy on what would be more conducive to what, but in the end, if you believe in the state, you believe in authority. So, you lost your little vote, you got to wait to change it. And in the meantime, if something bad happens, well, obviously most people are going to resist actual. Well, I don't know about if most people would resist, given the results of things like Milgram and anecdotal conceptualizations we can come through with like books like Ordinary Man or something like that in the history of the Holocaust generally. But just oh man, statists they don't think too much. This guy. Interestingly, Walsh has been a little bit more open about, or he's been making a little bit more sense where he's still at least criticizing the actions that Trump took with Iran. But like Larkin said, actually, it's like, well, so far the only people I've seen is Dave Smith apologizing even recognizing that he kind of got duped on that. So they're just going full steam ahead. It's always been obvious to the anarchists and stuff. It's like the statists never take responsibility for what their own politicians do. Um, they'll divert, and that's pretty funny. That's pretty good, dude. Oh man, you're probably a statist, but yeah, I'm gonna say if you're on Blue Sky, I mean, I guess you might not be a state worshiper, but I mean, statistically, the chances of you being an anarchist are still pretty low. So, what's up, buddy? I'm trying to escape. Cat got bored, I guess, wasn't giving him enough attention. Um, that is pretty good though. Yeah, I don't want to I guess I don't know who this person is, but I definitely like that picture, so I guess we'll retweet it. Why not? Pretty hilarious. See, like the blue crew, like political Democrat gal. It's so crazy that it's just it's so funny. The project calls for the replacement of merit-based federal civil service workers by people loyal to Trump. Well, I mean, yeah. Um, I mean, that's not actually what makes it a dictatorship. This is kind of just like the standard nepotism you're going to get with the state and most other things. But, I don't know if that's kind of tongue in cheek or what, but it's like, yeah, all states are dictatorships. The fact that you are still a statist in 2025 is mind blowing to me, and that we're still so that anarchists and libertarians are still so in the fringe, man. It's like everywhere I go on these internets, it's just the MAGA have infected. They've infested the place like cockroaches, no doubt. Some idiots posting some. Some idiots posting nonsense about how the liberals are regulating the economy, and then he turns around and he says we need to regulate, international trade. Um, but yeah, it's just mind blowing. Statists never see their own contradictions. Now he's saying here we got another one. Let's see, one big video project about I don't know what this is actually talking about, but okay. I can't tell if that's in favor of this stuff or what. I don't know, whatever. I'm gonna say most of this stuff is probably against it. That's pretty funny. He's in a diaper. Yeah, that's pretty good. Well, this happened a lot at the beginning. It was so funny because it was just like the meme rolled from one camp to the next when um, there were all those headlines with Trump when Trump did his little the music was playing and Trump did his little dance or whatever, and they're like, this guy's he's losing his mind. He's crazy. And it's like it's just like you guys are throwing the same mud at each other. It's like Biden's senile, but which I mean clearly he was out of it. It was obvious, and it's so crazy that everybody was denying it. It was like, dude, the guy is not all there right now, bro. Like, what are you talking about? You could tell. And then they just turn around and they start calling Trump mentally ill. It's like, I mean, the chances of both of these dudes being senile is not that low. You know what I mean? It's not that bad. It's not like horribly low chances that both of them are kind of losing it. They're getting older. So, and I mean, considering the fact that they're both state worshipping authoritarian politicians, they kind of lost it to begin with. And yeah, that's gross. Look at this cop. Ugh. Fucking cops, man. Smug. Wants to control your life for your own good. We told you all this educational policy of 20. You also see. Black colleges are pausing research, losing scholarships, rethinking how they define their mission as federal agencies. As federal agencies cut black-focused grants. Well, yeah, I mean, it really depends on what they're doing. Obviously, yes, unfortunately, you're going to say I'm a racist, but I mean, if you're going to say, should we cut black focused grants? I'm going to say, yeah. Should we cut white focused grants? Yeah. I don't think we have any white focused grants. Maybe they do. It'd be really easy because it probably is the fact that, I mean, given the fact that I'm pretty sure whites are still like 75% of the population, whites are going to get more just law of averages, right? Like just there's more white people. So there's going to be more white people going to colleges. There's going to be more white people doing this. There's going to be more white people doing that. So, um, but yeah, I mean, but it's not because it's a black focused thing. I'm not saying that they're not doing it because it's a black focused thing. It totally could be because of that. But when you just want to get rid of the state, you don't discriminate. You cut black focused grants. There's another thing too where they were talking about the Harvard money, and there's a great example because you know you're gonna say Harvard probably is mostly like rich white people that go to Harvard, and Trump and them were talking about we're gonna take the grants away from Harvard and give them to trade schools. And it's probably just numerically the fact that more white people go to trade schools too, and I want to cut those grants altogether as well. So, and that was the whole just the joke of that nonsense he was talking, where blah blah blah. We want to get rid of government. We want to, but it's like, dude, you're just babbling nonsense. You want to take it away from Harvard and give it to the trade schools. That's not actually doing. Like that's not doing what libertarians say to do anyway, which is we want to get rid of all this. Like cut it, don't move it around. And that's what we were saying was going to. At least that's what I was saying, and I'm sure somebody else on the planet said this too, because this is what Republicans do: is they just shift the money around. They'll cut a little bit, but then they'll boost it over here, and in the end, which is what has happened, is they just expand the debt and everything else in the end anyway. And like with Trump with his interest rate, all they're trying to do is defer payment to the future forever, and eventually that's going to blow up in their faces. So much so one day that it's just not going to be salvageable. Thank God. Hopefully that'll happen one day. Is that the government's economic scams will just collapse under their own weight, and people will realize we don't need these clowns for anything, and all they're doing is making things worse. Um, but yeah, it's tough though, and it's like I can't imagine what it's like to be a black person, and especially to not be an anarchist, to be like a black person who's not an anarchist, because this would seem like a complete attack upon your person, and a person can say it is, but I would have to say that depends on the perspective of the individual doing it, because if I went in there as an anarchist, I'm not just going to cut black focused grants, right? I'm going to cut all grants. That's the idea. Is we want to get rid of government spending, get government out of our lives, and allow people more to keep more of their own money and make their own economic decisions and life decisions. So hopefully a person could realize and would not perceive that as an attack upon their person for being a black person. Um, but I can see how it would be easy to see that, most especially coming from like Trump and company. Like I don't think that they are outright like necessarily racists, because I don't think that psychopaths truly think that way. Like in the moment they might, but if it come down to it, a psycho's a psycho. He's not going to pass up slaves just because they have the same skin color. I don't think. He could be, but I find it more likely that a psycho honestly doesn't care about that, because and if you look at the way that the state operates and what they do, it's just the fact that, again, like I said, whites are the majority in the population. They're going to be the ones paying taxes too. Um, they're going to be the ones who get shot for disobeying just the same. It's I guess there's probably some truth to the matter that maybe cops are less likely to just straight outright blast white people, and that could be a sign of I would prefer to call it like cultural racism. Like that, it's really just that individual might have that predilection, but um, you know, we don't want to get rid of the state as an attack on your person. It'd be easy to see how Trump might be doing that, though. Like I say, I don't think that the propaganda that Trump uses doesn't necessarily have anything to do, nor does it need to have anything to do with racism. Not when it comes to cutting taxes, and not when it comes to his authoritarian perspective, right? Like you can be just like a Marxist. You can be an authoritarian socialist and not be a racist, or at least your overall agenda is not necessarily based on racism, right? And like I said, just the simple fact that whites are the majority of the population, they're also getting victimized by the state. They're just also too indoctrinated to see it. Like the MAGA is a perfect example of that, where people are sitting here begging the politician to control their businesses. The MAGAcrat says I want the government to decide who I'm allowed to hire at my business and who I can sell my house to and who I can have over for dinner. That's migration regulation. They just don't think all the way through on what that implies, and they also take as given the lie, the classical liberal lie, that the state can be and is our representative, our mutual defense agency, and all of this nonsense. So they basically repeat the same things because they all accept that underlying lie that the state is somehow our representative or some manifestation of the people, which is just a floating abstraction. At best, the state can only be a representative of the people who voted and won, and whose politicians are therefore in office, making up rules for everyone to obey. Um, this is here. I don't know exactly what's going on, what they're talking about here. Maybe I should look up the news and rant about that too. But I guess I got some stuff I could be doing this morning. It's been quite a long rant. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, all right. I guess I'm out. Keep your eye out for these Nazis, and